quarterback, so you're expecting both to be able to play and just see how practice goes as far as who will maybe start, or think you'll probably see them both in there this week?
We're going to, Jake will be for sure cleared during this week of practice. Sam's progress is going to be a little bit contingent upon how he comes around with that ankle. He suited up for the game, but his movement was not where it needed to be, and so we made a measured decision to go ahead and hold him, and we're in hopes that during the course of this week he'll get some meaningful reps and be ready to go. But I think you can definitely count on Jake is going to be in practice the whole time.
Coach, Michigan State really made their name last year playing that tough, physical brand of defense. Are you seeing any difference in the way they're playing defense through their first few games this year?
Yes and no. I know that they've replaced some starters. Oregon was able to get some big plays on them, and that's some stuff that you didn't see a lot of last year. Now they had a bye week, and those remnants of the mental errors that really have nothing to do with some of the physical ability, whether they're cutting receivers loose and things like that. You didn't see that against Eastern Michigan, and so that's a trademark of good coaching and a good program. And I know that was a nationally, that was a profile game of the week, and I saw a significant improvement. And so we're going to anticipate them being set and ready to go defensively for us.
Coach, as far as having 3 wins, 2 of them so far have had, big dramatic final drives. I'm wondering, when you're in one of those situations where it's a final drive to win the game, what does it take as far as mentality, leadership, all those things to be able to come through in that kind of a situation?
Well, it's a great question. In the comment, first of all, just beyond emotion and things like that, there's the preparation that comes into play. There's a long-term relationship between our coaches and our players to create a vision and establish trust and instill confidence. Certainly play calling comes into play, but I think moreover a belief that that we'll figure out a way to win the game, and it may not look very clear, but somehow in the midst of some of these obstacles, we're gonna find a way to get it done, and it's been really encouraging to see our football team respond that way.
You mentioned even after the game against Florida Atlantic, Winters played as a true freshman. You mentioned Kamana could easily start or certainly play more. It seems like you're seeing more guys both in the safety positions and cornerback play. Is that based on competition? Is it based on other guys rising up and starters maybe not as good, or a little bit of both, or what's kind of happening there?
That's a great point. It's a little bit of both. Robert Priester came into fall camp and showed a willingness to run and hit people. They didn't know sometimes which way to run and which guy to hit, but he was doing that. And so we looked at that athleticism and the competitive nature, and we found a way to get him on the field. And I thought last week, I know he had the one pass interference or defensive holding call, but caused a fumble. I don't know how many tackles he was in on. We need more and more competitive football players, guys that are just going to go out there and sell out and do everything they can Mach 1, and he's one of them. And so we're culling through our current staff. That's one of the responsibilities that we have as coaches, is constantly to look for continual improvement, and sometimes that means switching personnel. And what we're doing is we're identifying the guys that are going to go out there and make plays and compete. They may make mistakes, but they're going to play as hard as what they can. And so you're seeing some of that infused into our lineups.
You mentioned, with Winters playing, that's your third true freshman to play, not barring an injury somewhere. Is that probably, as we're a quarter of the way through the season, of the true freshmen, are those probably going to be the guys, or could we see more, or is that kind of, where do you stand there?
Well, we had taken a hard look at Ryan Cummings, and there was going to be a very good chance that Ryan was going to play, and has got somewhat of a knee injury right now. What time of year he's able to come back is going to have I guess a determining factor whether you play him or not. And then the other thing is we were down 2 guards, so we'll constantly be looking at our freshmen But there's going to come a time too, Robert, where you got to look and say, okay, is the lion's share of our season completed, and do we want to redshirt this guy? So that's kind of where we're at.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the freshmen, but as far as seniors, Devin Harris leading the team in tackles, and obviously he's a 6-year guy that's been around the block. He's it seems like he just kind of puts his head down and does his job. What have you seen from him as far as reliability this season?
He does everything he can, and maturity and effort come into play. There may be guys in the Mountain West that may be a step or two faster or more agile, but I doubt that you're going to find anybody who's more driven to go out there and compete. And he's one of those guys that will do whatever he can. And I think Mark Nazach is another guy. You're seeing more and more Pat Burns. You're seeing more and more of these guys that, it's their last year of football and it's going to be their best.
Craig, is this kind of a game that maybe puts a little smile on your face? I mean, it feels like this is a game that could be in the 1980s as well as now. Is this the kind of game you kind of like as a head coach?
Well, there's certainly a familiarity. I've spoken with their head coach a couple times, and we have tons of mutual friends, and we have a great deal of admiration for their program. I would venture to say that they would respect the body of work that had been done previous and then now. And so you look and say, hey, this is a team that lines up, looks in the eye, has athleticism. It's certainly not going to be a 3-yard in a cloud of dust, but well coached, disciplined. It's going to be a big challenge, but I know our coaches are looking forward to it, and I'm sure our players are as well.
Coach, you mentioned not 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but kind of like, if you go back to their offense last year, they did kind of predicate on running. It seems like, and you touched on Connor Cook a little bit, but they're flinging it around a little bit more this year.
Well, they've got some good receivers. As a matter of fact, their receiver coach used to work with us. They've got some good receivers, and he's a very capable quarterback, and their line protects well. And I think that's another step in maturation. They leveraged their defense extensively last year. It wasn't like they were completely one-dimensional, but this year they're certainly more explosive on offense, and they have a lot of different threats. And you saw that Eastern Michigan game. You put 70-some points on somebody, you've got to have some weapons, and it can't all just be running.
You mentioned to the familiarity with Coach D'Antoni. I know it was 30 years ago you and him interviewed for the same job at North Dakota State as a defensive backs coach. So are you close to him? Do you know him well?
You know what?
Speak to them?
Yeah, we've shared some conversations on the telephone, and that's about it. I can tell you from an outsider's perspective to see, I knew when he first got to be the head coach at Cincinnati and the job that he did there, and then the remarkable job he's done at Michigan State. In and around our country, he enjoys a great reputation as an excellent football coach and a better person.
Coach, one of those positions where you didn't really know much about it coming in was the tight end position. Obviously, it's so different in your offense. I'm wondering, as far as J.D. Krill, has he been sort of a pleasant surprise just as far as his ability to do pretty much whatever you guys ask of him to help the team?
He's been a real pleasant surprise, and I think the biggest thing is want to. You have a guy that passes the eyeball test, but you don't, okay, how much desire do they really have? How intense is he? How important is it, football to him? And, he's been a real joy to coach along with a lot of our other seniors. And, this program was not, I guess, built highlighting tight ends and fullbacks. And so we knew we were going to have some work to do when we first took the job. And so it's been a pleasant surprise.
It's the second road game that you guys are going on to a top 10 school and their atmosphere. Does the Oregon game prepare you more for this, the guys more for this?
Well, I think a little bit. Certainly crowd noise comes into play, being in a different environment, a different routine. Certainly having a senior group helps. Guys have traveled before. Sometimes, it's always amazing. You'll take a first road trip and there'll be a couple players who've never flown on an airplane before. So that certainly helps. However, this is going to be a different environment than Oregon, but I know that our players and our coaches are looking forward to going to East Lansing.
Coach, we talked just a little bit about Will Two-Time and just kind of what you guys have seen out of him. Kind of comes out of nowhere and passes the eye test a little bit, but just kind of been seeing the field, getting some defensive reps, special teams, and just kind of what you've seen from him.
You know what, he's really overcome an awful lot. I mean, he's moved around and worked hard academically. You're accurate. I mean, when you look at a safety with the the specs, you know, he's got good size, he runs the field well, which lends itself, if you're not a starter as a safety, typically you're going to be a teamer, being able to contribute on special teams, and he certainly has done that. He plays as fast as what he can, and he's learning to play in our system each week, so he's gotten better. There's still work to be done, but he has been a real pleasant surprise, one of those guys that, yeah, you have in fall camp, and okay, he clears his eligibility, the next thing you know, you're out there looking and saying, geez, he matches up pretty well, let's give him a look. And that comes into part of how we structure things in fall camp, and we double rep, and so what comes about is those guys that have some ability, there's more film of them to watch, they get more meaningful reps, and there's a better evaluation.